Welcome, everybody, to Iron Sharpens Iron. Today, we're going to be talking about the question, is it really living if it's easy? Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome to week 2 of Iron Sharpens Iron. To all of you who listened to our episode on gratitude last week, thank you. We appreciate you. You are the reason we are doing this. And I tell you, the response has been overwhelmingly positive. I can't tell you that the messages and the heartfelt response has been wonderful. So thank you, our listeners, for giving us a chance here and making us a part of your week.
Which is crazy to me too, right, Jake? Like, I never thought that people would be so affected by like the thoughts that we have in our head. But it just goes to show you when you truly do follow your passion, because this is a passion project for us. We're not doing this to make money. We're not doing this to get famous. We're not doing this to go viral. We're doing it because it's in our hearts and we want to get it out. And it just goes to show you that when you actually let whatever it is out that you have in your heart, people resonate with it. They really do. So that was surprising and not surprising to me. And we really do appreciate all of you. Like, thank you so much.
100%. And as we mentioned last week, and we'll continue to mention, our desire is to just put out content that is positive, that is uplifting, that empowers you, and that really fosters growth in each individual. And to that end, this week, we are going to talk about a topic that Solo touched on a little bit towards the end of our episode on gratitude. So definitely go check that out if you haven't yet. But the topic of adversity.
Yeah.
All right. We pose the question, is it really living if it's easy? And as I've thought about this, as human beings, I do believe that we have this inherent belief. I think it's a false belief, but this inherent belief that when things are comfortable, that's when life is great.
Right.
And we want it easy. And so people will stay within, a job that they absolutely hate, but because they're afraid of ruffling the waters a little bit, right? Everything's calm and good. And why stir the waters? But is that really living?
I feel like I don't know why our brains are designed around comfort, but they are, right? We want to avoid pain. You go to touch a stove and you instantly pull away. You don't have to teach a baby that when something's hot, they pull their hand away. It's just instinctually in our biology. But if you think about it, what's also in our biology is growth through struggle, is development only on demand. So I teach a leadership development program at my church. Hashtag Elevation Church, hashtag shameless plug, right? But one of our leadership development programs is called Development on Demand. It's the way to win. And the principle is the principle that we all understand. You only grow because of the demand that's put on you. Your muscles only grow because of the demand or the resistance that's put on it. Essentially all of us want to build some muscle, right? I know I need to build a little muscle and lose a little fat because, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, bro, do something about yourself. But we all want to build a little muscle. And we understand this principle in the gym. You go to the gym and you lift heavy weights. The only way to get bigger, the only way to get stronger is to put a demand on your muscles. And when that happens, it's actually I don't know, how do I say this? A scientific principle called hypertrophy. Essentially, you have muscle cells, muscle fibers, and the more demand you put on it, the bigger those muscle fibers, those muscle cells grow. It's called hypertrophy. But something that a lot of people don't know is that at a certain point, when you've put that weight on your chest or your back or your shoulders enough, at a certain point when your muscles are as big as they can get, hypertrophy-wise, they will and do something called muscle hyperplasia, which essentially is it duplicates the muscle cell. Now, instead of one big muscle cell, you have two big muscle cells. So you literally are twice as strong, as big as you were before. Now, obviously that doesn't correlate to your strength. You can't I'm doing 315 and all of a sudden, hyperplasia, no, I'm at 30. But you get the point.
Yeah. You don't automatically just double in size. You don't just rip through your shirt like the Hulk.
Yeah.
But your potential just doubled.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And that's a fascinating concept. I didn't know about the hyperplasia or plasia, however you say it, until we talked about this a few days ago. But people, almost everybody sets a goal at the start of the year to go work out. And what happens if you haven't been working out, if you haven't been exercising for, a long period of time, whether it's a few weeks, a few months, a few years, the first few days are rough.
So bad.
And there is pain. And it doesn't matter whether you're just walking a few miles on the treadmill or whether you're only benching the bar. Everybody's looking at me when I say that. But the pain hurts, which is why after a week, 50, 70% of people who have that goal, they're suddenly regretting buying the gym pass. And it's because we think we want to be comfortable. When life is easy, we think everything's great. And I'm not going to suggest in any way that we go seek out adversity. That's not the purpose of our message this week. The purpose of our message this week is to look through it through a different lens and to do it what Solo's talking about with the gym. See it as a way that the pain can help you to grow. And I heard this analogy and I couldn't find the speech. I wanted to give credit, but even the AI overlords couldn't help me find the speech where I heard this. But it was from a conference at the church I go to, and the person that was speaking referenced fiction stories. I'm going to ask you an improv question here, Solo, but who's your favorite fictional character in movie or film? Or movie or film? Those are one and the same. But in literature or film?
I don't know, man. I got a lot, but I do, love me some superhero films, right? I love the Marvel movies. I love the DCs. I love the Supermans. I love the Batmans. I love the story of like the superheroes struggle. So I don't know if I could point to my favorite child, but
let's pick on Batman.
Yeah, let's pick on Batman.
Everybody knows Batman, right? And whether it's the Michael Keaton or the Christian Bale or now the
Robert Pattinson. That was
Robert
a good Batman. For those of you who haven't seen that new Batman, was good, right?
I mean, to go from being Twilight with glitter on your face to Batman,
the sparkly vampire, to Batman, the Dark Knight, did a great job.
Yeah, growth through adversity. There's an example right there. But and he's also in the Harry Potter franchise, so props to Robert Pattinson, man.
Man has range.
But let's pick on Batman, because Batman, I mean, yeah, he's a billionaire, so that helped his cause. But what caused him growth? And I'm going to use the Dark Batman Begins, right, with Christian Bale is my example for this in the films, because I think it's really good. Is he has what he is very comfortable life. He's there, billionaires, living in the mansions, got his parents. Just everything is good, private school, all of that. And then what happens? Comes out of the theater, his parents get shot.
Yep.
Suddenly he's an orphan. Still has all the money, but he's going through the emotional trauma of seeing that, and there's some PTSD there for sure of watching that happen to your parents. And the way it's represented in the Dark Knight trilogy with Batman Begins is he starts to go through this journey where he's going, he gets beat up and everything, and then he goes and he receives his training, and the training's incredibly hard.
Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, Ra's al Ghul. And he's getting cut by swords and all these other things. And it's only through that he learns his potential and becomes ultimately who he is, and finds his cause to go and save his city and be a hero for people. For me personally, if we're looking at literature, I've always loved Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings before Peter Jackson made Lord of the Rings super cool with the films. And I like the Lord of the Rings more than The Hobbit with the Bilbo Baggins story. But with Lord of the Rings, you have Frodo, who gets thrust into this horrible circumstance, right? Has the Ring of Power there that can doom the world as this little object of the ring. And he's supposed to carry it from a very comfortable, farming community there in Hobbiton and Bag End with his home there. Everything is great. Plenty of food, plenty of money, friends all around him. Like
Sam.
You got Sam there as the gardener, and the Shire is like the utopian society in a way, right? They just live there, they smoke their pipe weed, and everything is hunky-dory. And they're gardeners, I think, for a purpose. It takes care of the munchy cravings as they're smoking their pipe weed.
That's good stuff in the Shire, I hear.
Yeah, and so, but suddenly, the wizard comes in and thrust this journey upon him, and he goes to goes to hell essentially, right, in Mordor, and has to climb into the fiery volcano. Unbelievably difficult circumstances. But would we watch Batman like if he hadn't gone through what he did? If Batman had only stayed as the
billionaire Bruce Wayne,
nothing ever happened to him, would we care about Bruce Wayne? If Frodo had never left the Shire, would we have Lord of the Rings and care about Frodo? Luke Skywalker, if he'd stayed a moisture farmer there on Tatooine, and I'm totally geeking out here with all these references.
Moisture farmer.
If that had never happened, we wouldn't have Star Wars. and nobody would care about Luke Skywalker.
It's
And yet, as individuals, we shy away from the challenges that give us opportunity to grow. Do you go to the local community college because it's safe and comfortable?
Yep.
Or do you take a risk and go overseas or apply, even just apply for Harvard or whatever it is you want to do?
Yeah.
Do you stay in your dead end job that has no growth potential, not making the kind of money you want? Or do you take a risk?
Yeah.
Go learn a skill, do something better.
Do you continue in the relationship that's abusive and not giving you what you want, or you take a risk on yourself, on your own heart, on your own happiness, and plunge out from the comfortable Shire to Mordor, knowing that you have no shoes, big old hobbit feet, and there's a lot of sticks and rocks and volcano lava on the way. And I feel like those folks that do that like carve that path through the struggle are the ones, to your point, that we sit down when we're sitting there trying to be comfortable and we yearn to be like Frodo's. We yearn to be like Batman's. You don't dress up as billionaire Bruce Wayne for Halloween. Kids dress up as Batman. Because Batman is what we instinctually know to be true. There's a spiritual truth to it. There's a physical truth to it. There's a mental truth to it. There's a natural truth to it. Like, you heard the butterfly story, right?
The butterfly flaps its wings. Is that the one or a different one?
That one's a good one. We can get into the butterfly effect, which was a wild movie, by the way. If you guys haven't seen Butterfly Effect, I feel like we're about to jump to a movie podcast because you dropped some gems in here. That said,
you're talking about the Cocoon.
Yeah, there's a little boy, we'll call him Little Solo. Extremely handsome little boy, super cool, not very popular. So the little boy was walking home from school and he saw a caterpillar. And he's like, oh, great. So he grabbed it, he went home, told mom and dad, hey, this is my new pet. Can I keep it? They said, sure. Caterpillars don't poop on the carpet. Keep the caterpillar. So they got a little terrarium for him. They put some sticks, they put some leaves, they did all the, caterpillar stuff. And he called him Caddy. Very creative little boy. So every day, little Solo ran home to hang out with his buddy Caddy and told him all about all the crazy stuff that he was learning in school and everything like that. But one day, Caddy started acting funny. Caddy crawled up on one of his little sticks, started wrapping himself in this weird goo, and stopped moving. So little Solo was kind of tripping. Goes to school, talks to his teacher, and she said, oh, I'm excited for you because your friend little Caddy is going through what's called a metamorphosis. Caddy is going to be very different by the time he comes out of this what's called cocoon or chrysalis. And guess what? What, little Solo said? Caddy's going to be able to fly. He said, what? Yep. So every day, little Solo ran home, looked at Caddy sitting in the little chrysalis, little cocoon, not moving, talking to him still. And one day, little Caddy started to kind of struggle. There's a little crack, a little tiny pinhole at the bottom of the cocoon, and Caddy was struggling his little caterpillar booty to get out. And little Solo, being the good friend that he is, didn't like to see his friend struggle. He didn't like to see his friend in pain. He didn't like to see his friend face this obstacle that he perceived as bad, like we all do. So he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to rip open the cocoon a little bit. I'm a lot bigger. I'm a lot stronger than little Caddy. And little Caddy, sure enough, avoided the struggle, slumped out from that cocoon, and looked weird. He had this big old abdomen and these little tiny shriveled wings. And so little Solo, being concerned about his buddy, went back to school the next day, asked his teacher, and she said, no. She said, little Solo, that struggle, that obstacle was actually necessary. You see, when a caterpillar, what's now a butterfly, goes through that transformation to become something different, the process where that little tiny hole is created and that struggle that they struggle to get through the little tiny hole actually pushes all the fluid from the abdomen into the wings, which allows the wings to be strong, which allows the abdomen to be small, and which allows the butterfly to fly. And unfortunately, because you avoided, or Caddy avoided that struggle, didn't go through that process, Caddy will never fly. And I feel like that's so true for us too. Like the struggle that we're facing, the obstacle that we face, the obstacles that we try to avoid, the things that we try to pray away are actually the things that will forge us, that will push all the junk out of wherever it needs to be pushed into our wings to give us the ability to fly. And I could tell you firsthand that the struggles that I've overcome are the only reason why I am who I am today. I love me some God. I love leadership. I love positivity. I love all the things that are good and whole because of the darkness that I struggled through when I was earlier in my life, the terrible decisions that I made, the horrible circumstances that I personally put myself in. It was no one else's fault but my own, but that was God blessing me through the struggle. It wasn't him saying, oh, I'm mad at you or angry with you, but he was blessing me with the struggle. He was blessing me with that weight. He was blessing me with that fire of affliction because he knew that that would make me so appreciative of the light. You have to be scared of the dark to appreciate the lights being turned on. God, thank you for so much darkness, but thank you also for turning on the light. To your point, I'm not telling anyone to go out and turn the lights off. Go look for struggle.
Yep.
Because there are some folks out there that just want to hurt, perpetually stay in the dark, perpetually stay in that struggle. And that is not what we are saying. But what we are saying is that sometimes what you're going through, the thing that you're praying away, is the exact thing that you need. So instead of praying for it to go away, pray for the strength that you need to go through it. Because the you that you meet on the other side of the storm is the you that you will need to be to accomplish those big dreams that God put in your heart. So go through the storm willingly, excitedly, and struggle through.
Sometimes you really do just have to embrace it. You mentioned the personal struggles and you get me reminiscing while you're sharing that story. And it's so powerful. It is. Sometimes I know parents, they want to help their kids avoid things.
Yep.
And there are certain things absolutely, help your kids avoid, right?
Yeah.
We don't need to encourage our
Go
youth of
smoke some
today
crack,
to
Timmy.
start smoking crack or doing fentanyl or anything that's incredibly dangerous. Don't need to go teach them how to commit grand theft auto or anything, but
Play on that clip over there. It'll teach you character.
but teaching them how to work hard to achieve their goals, absolutely. That's the good kind of pain that you're going to get at the gym.
100%.
I think on my own life in early life, and there are things I went through at school with bullying and things that it sucked.
Yeah.
I don't have hardly any fond memories of middle school at all. But today, it's helped me to be able to overcome a lot of social challenges, right? I'm inherently an introvert. Not to give myself labels, but my natural proclivity is towards introversion and to isolate a little bit, which makes things like a podcast incredibly hard because I know this is going out to the world and I'm speaking on the fly here without a reviewed, detailed script or anything.
From your heart.
And one of the challenges that was hard for me, where I had to choose challenge over comfort was very shortly out of high school. I was at Idaho State University, had a small scholarship and said, hey, why not? Like my best friend at the time was going down there. So we went down to college together almost on the fly. Like it was a very quick decision. And down there I met this beautiful girl and we started dating, but I had always wanted to be a missionary for the church. Well, then I came into this kind of issue here where I had to I had two paths I could follow. Could continue with this scholarship and dating this girl that was absolutely wonderful. And, who knows where that might have led. Or I leave it all. No idea if she's going to be there when I get back.
Probably
And
won't.
given how wonderful she was, likelihood is probably she's going to find someone better than Jacob Anderson. But, and go off. And so, I submitted paperwork and everything to become a missionary and I get called to go to Brazil. I'd never been to Brazil. And
it's not right up the street.
It was a wonderful experience, but sitting there thinking through it, and then 9/11 happens, and then I'm thinking, well, hey, maybe I go serve my country. And so there's all these choices. Ultimately chose to go with what my heart was saying and go to Brazil. Well, I show up at the airport. This is about 4 or 5 months after 9/11. I'd never been on a commercial flight. And I go to this little local regional airport there in Idaho Falls, and there's armed National Guard, like M16 rifles in the airport, wand screening everybody.
Full cavity searches.
Almost. That's a little uncomfortable for the 19-year-old boy here.
Serious obstacles to get to Brazil here.
I learned some things about myself going through that, but they pull out this metal detector. Well, I walk through it, fine. Then they do like full on wand and I'm like lifting alarms and everything. In my pocket, I had like kindergarten pencil sharpener because I had a journal I was going to write on this 24-hour flight to Brazil. And they pulled it out and they're like, this could be used as a weapon.
What are they going to do with this pencil sharpener?
Pulled me out of the line and there's this little, like it's half an inch long and they're like, could be a weapon. But it's right after 9/11.
With a half inch.
Yeah. And I'm like freaking out. Like the first time ever left home, first time I've ever been on a commercial flight, leaving the country, going somewhere I don't speak the language, don't know the culture, or anything. And I go from a town of 50,000 to, at the time, it was like the third largest city in the world in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for missionary training down there, to language training. Absolutely terrifying. And I tell you, there were many times along the way where I felt like quitting. I felt, I hadn't done any Latin language education in school or anything. And all these, the group of missionaries with me down there, most of them had taken Spanish, which is at least related. So I felt
Right.
I was incompetent in learning the language. It's different food, huge culture shock, but got through it.
Yeah.
And I look back at that, and what did that allow me to do later in life? I came back, was going to a different school, had a job opportunity to drive across the country to Virginia. Would have been on my own. Didn't really know anybody in the office. I knew a couple of the sales guys, but nobody on the tech crew. Made it so much easier to do that because I'd already gone through the challenge of going, completely different country. Sure, I'll get in a car, drive to the other side of the country,
Nothing.
spend 4 months working. That was easy by comparison,
Yeah.
but still gave me huge growth, growth in customer service and work and all these other things. Had I not done that, and no discredit to those who work for the company I'm about to name, but at the time, I was pushing freight at Walmart making like $7 an hour. And I was working the graveyard shift and then going to economics class at 7:30 in the morning because the graveyard shift paid an extra dollar an hour.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, going and doing the alarm installs and everything made much more than that, and took a leap of faith and a challenge, and it was all hard. But I look back at the different branching points in my life where I made these decisions. At every single point in time where I was doing that, it was uncomfortable and it was challenging. And I felt afraid and I felt anxiety. And, last week we talked about, knocking doors during COVID. That was uncomfortable,
I bet.
but I'm a better person because of it.
And you're a good man. So I'm glad you went through the struggle. I'm glad that they confiscated your half-inch pencil sharpener. Who knows what you would have done with that bad boy on that plane. But it is true. Like, the obstacles truly the way. Like these fork in the roads, the uncomfortability. What is one of our leaders, one of my favorite leaders, another shameless plug, Brian Summerhays, say that there's no growth in the comfort zone and unfortunately no comfort in the growth zone. So what do you want to do?
Like that.
Yeah, you want to grow? If so, be careful what you wish for, because it's going to suck. But the suck, embracing that suck, is kind of like the best muscle that you can develop, because once you embrace the suck, once you actually associate that suck with growth, you're already ahead of most folks that are trying to get rid of the suck, that are trying to stay in that comfort zone. I don't recommend anybody take metal objects onto planes that they might get wanded and a full cavity searched. But I do recommend for people to embrace the suck.
But one other thing I want to hit on here is a lot of times we play the blame game when life gets hard.
Yeah.
And we like to point fingers.
Yeah.
And usually the most easy finger, or the direction we generally choose to place blame, is up. And people are like, why does God do bad things to me? I'm trying to be a good person. Why is life suddenly hard? They blame, and sometimes I think God does truly put challenges in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
There are things that I think defy any other explanation than, God wanted us to grow. Life was getting a little too easy. We were getting a little too complacent. He wants to see if test our faith, if you will.
100%.
But a lot of the times, I think he gets a lot of blame. That is unfair, because one thing I know to be true is that there's plenty of adversity that I have caused myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been a fool at times and really done some things that I'm not proud of now. And it caused some challenges that I could have avoided.
Yeah.
So I would caution people against, just pointing all the fingers outward, right? When you're pointing one finger, how many are pointing back at you, right?
Yep. Look at the 3.
So recognize and take ownership for our own decisions, and recognize that sometimes we cause pain on ourselves. And sometimes it's by purpose, right? Like the missionary, like that was going to be a challenge anyway. The blessings far exceeded the pain.
And I feel like sometimes pointing up and blaming God is a good thing, because it is a lot of the times God, but it's not a bad thing like we perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it says in the Bible, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. It also says we glory in our suffering because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, in character, hope. It says in Isaiah, it says, see, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. And that's just my faith. I mean, in all faiths, if you think about it, like Judaism, the very name Israel, which in the Jewish faith is really God's chosen people, means one who wrestles with God. Struggle is part of the dynamic of their faith journey. It says in one of their spiritual texts, whomever the Holy One loves, he tests. Look at Buddhism. The first noble truth of Buddhism is that suffering, or dukkha, I believe it's called, is inevitable. But it's also the key to your awakening. Look at Islam. Tests, or I believe that's called fitna, are sent by Allah to refine the believer and elevate their ranks. Do the people think that they will not, if the people think that if they say we believe, they will not be tested? It says that in the Quran. Then you think about Hinduism. Dharma through struggle. Life is a series of tests to refine the soul. Struggle is part of fulfilling one's dharma, or I think that means sacred duty. One of the, actually, speaking of Hinduism, one of my favorite stories in the Bhagavad Gita is from a prince called Arjuna, I believe is his name. He's one of the central heroes and a primary character in the Bhagavad Gita. And essentially, he was a prince, a warrior, an archer, and a symbol of a spiritual seeker who stands at a crossroads between duty and fear in this one piece of the Bhagavad Gita. So imagine you're this guy standing on a battlefield, and it's not just any field. But it's a battlefield where on the other side, you face your family, your mentors, your childhood friends. And that's where Arjuna stood. He was a warrior, a leader, but in that moment, he was really neither. He was scared. He looked across the field. He saw the faces of the people that he loved. His hands started to shake. He bowed his head. His knees buckled, and he said, I can't do this. I'd rather die than fight this fight. And that's when his charioteer, which was actually Krishna, which in the Hinduist faith is, I would say God resurrected, looked at him and didn't offer any comfort, but he gave him some clarity. He said, you were made for this. This is your moment, not to destroy, but to fulfill your purpose. Your fear is not a sign to quit. It's the fire that will refine your soul. He wanted out of the adversity, right? But it was only through that adversity that he became who he truly was. And I feel like Arjuna, we all reach that point where the thing in front of us feels so heavy, so complicated, so painful that we want to quit. But the lesson is pretty clear, right? We don't grow when things are easy. We grow when things are hard. Our breakdowns become our breakthroughs. The resistance to adversity becomes the moment we actually discover our purpose. There's an African proverb that says that smooth seas do not make skillful sailors. In other words, it's not the easy seasons that shape us, right? It's the storms. We don't learn how to navigate life by floating around. We learn by steering through winds, waves, getting seasick if you're like me, right?
Yeah.
Adversity isn't the enemy. It's the training ground. And it's not just spiritual truths in the way of, religion, but you look at Stoicism and our boy Marcus Aurelius. He said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Suffering is our curriculum. We shouldn't avoid it. We should use it. So when you point to God and say, shame on you, God, for putting me through this, maybe we should say, thank you, God, for putting me through this. I just wish it was that easy, right?
It's definitely,
it was that easy.
It's easy to say, sometimes hard to put in practice, but, and even if it's not saying thank you, at least ask the question, okay, God, what is it you want me to learn?
What is it?
What is it you need me to do? What is it you want me to learn? And the third one, right, we talked about sometimes we create our own challenges, sometimes on purpose in the case of goals and growth. Sometimes it's just bad decisions lead to consequences.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I try to teach my kids is you have agency. You get to make a choice. There are consequences for bad choices and there's blessings for good choices. And then there's, we can blame God. And sometimes it truly is him that's giving us something to go through to test our faith and refine us. I love that scripture from Isaiah as well, right? The refiner's fire.
Yeah.
To remove all the impurities from the ore, you got to melt it down. And melting it down is not comfortable. As a, horticulturist by education, not by practice, pruning is a part of having a fruit orchard. You got to cut out the dead wood. Sometimes you got to cut through some of the living branches to shape the tree and get it to produce better fruit.
That's crazy that it works like that. I've always been interested in that. Like, why does that? I mean, it's just another biological truth of exactly what we're saying, but it's wild that that's just a thing.
And some of the strongest trees are the ones that endure the strongest winds.
Mm.
Or if they're not getting water, the roots have to go deeper, right? The roots have to go deeper and deeper to find water, and it allows them to withstand the storm. If there's just water all the time, the roots stay shallow, and then when a wind comes, rips up the tree. But the third one I wanted to talk about was, other people's agency and their bad choices sometimes cause us to go through pain, and that is an unfortunate part of life. And it's the one thing that God won't take away from us is our agency and our ability to choose. We can lose it through poor choices, right? You do something that puts you in prison, suddenly you have less agency. However, other people, and this is particularly hard when you think about some of the just crap that happens in the world, is people make a bad choice and it affects so many lives, right? I think the war is an easy example of this. You get a leader of a country decides to become a little imperialist. How many lives are affected, right? We know what happened in World War II and what Hitler started there, and just the catastrophe and horrible things that happened as a result. But on a smaller scale, bullying. Right now, it's social media bullying is horrible for kids in schools and gets so bad that some of them, unfortunately choose to end their life. The one thing that I have found to be true, though, and hopefully brings comfort to somebody who's listening, God will take all of that pain, the things that we go through, in some way it turns for our good. Maybe it's, going through the PTSD of some of the things that people go through. Maybe the way that it becomes for your good is because you will become more empathetic.
Mm.
And you will be able to help somebody else because of what happened to you. You will be able to help them avoid some suffering.
Yeah.
Or
The
you'll be able to
trial
just help them get through it. And
becomes your testimony, right? Like
yeah,
what Joseph told his brothers, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. I couldn't agree with you more.
that's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. And I'll tell you right now, like, my family's, so we just experienced loss. My mother-in-law, Sandy Nelson, passed away just a few weeks ago. And
I'm sorry, man.
no, thank you. I do appreciate that. She's honestly one of the single best people that I know. And I say I know, not that I knew, because I know she's still with us. But she was so incredibly selfless, and spent her life just trying to help others. And that's what a great example. And we can, as a family, we can only try to be as great as she was. But as she was struggling with cancer, I have to try and get through this, but it was really hard. She was out in California with her husband, who, my father-in-law is about to go through heart surgery himself after just going through losing his wife of 53 years. They were married for 53 years, man, and they were out there almost alone. They had support from the church, which was wonderful and really helped. But she needed a lot of care, and my wife Elisa was going through this dilemma of, do I leave, not knowing when I'm going to come back, because I don't know how long mom's going to need help. But I have 3 kids, and a husband who's still a little bit of a child. And
You and me both, my friend.
can I leave them for a period of time, and will they be okay? And it was a friend of ours who only moved to Houston, within the last year. Of all the places they could have moved, ended up moving within the geography that they would attend our church and our local congregation. And so we met them, and this woman had gone through something very similar. And her husband works for the State Department. So every 3 years they moved to a different country, and they lived in some amazing places in the world. But while they were living in Southeast Asia, her own mother was going through terminal cancer. And she packed up, flew over, spent a couple months with them, and was able to be there for her mom. And so her experience in the pain that she went through and all that loss, she was able to tell Elisa, look, I went through something very similar, and your family will be okay. And that time you're going to have with your mom while she's, going through this, you will not trade that for the world afterwards. So, you know, cancer is one of those things that in many cases probably is God that's kind of causing someone to go through that. But her pain and her challenge and adversity that she went through ended up being a blessing for our family and allowing Elisa to make a very difficult choice, which she absolutely does not regret, even though she was gone, from us for 9 weeks.
Imagine Batman talking to an orphan who just lost their parents. Like, I imagine what kind of solace that Batman could give to that orphan because Batman has gone through it. Like, our test, our trial, at least every time I can think of, always becomes our testimony. It becomes that thing that other people need, which is why I think it's so important to remember that we're not just here for us. Like, you have to ask yourself, like, why do I go through these things? Why do I do these things? Because through us, blessings happen. The only way that God can impact people is through people. So we go through things a lot of the times, not really even for us, but for that person, like your wife who's going to be going through the same thing that we went through. And the crazy thing is that we get a deposit too. I am sure that that woman got a huge deposit in giving your wife the type of peace and advice that she gave him.
100%.
100%, right?
Without
So
question.
it's not about us. It's about all of us. And if we could keep that mindset, maybe, just maybe, probably not, but maybe we can look upon struggle and we could tie it back to our last episode, which is gratitude. Because if you could be grateful for the struggles, if you could be excited, if you could be like Viktor Frankl, sitting inside of a Nazi concentration camp where people are getting gassed and your whole family died and say, you know what? Man, the things that I'm going to be able to teach my students after this, the knowledge that I'm going to gain, the lessons that I'm going to be impart, thank you, God. And have that type of character where you understand that although our liberty could be taken, our agency can never be taken. And if we could use these beautiful faculties of imagination to imagine a world that is better, a life that is better because of the struggle that we're going through, as opposed to what most of us do, which is use our imagination to imagine, oh my God, there's layoffs, I'm going to lose my job, and I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, I'm going to get kicked out, my kids are going to be on the streets, they're going to start smoking crack, I don't want my son to smoke crack. It's all in your head. 99% of the time, those things don't happen. So maybe, just maybe, if we could realize that it's not just about us, it's about all of us, we can be grateful for the struggles that we go through to impact those that are going to go through the same thing and know that we're going to be their rock. We're going to be what keeps them steadfast. And we're going to be the instrument that God uses to bless the world. Maybe we could have some gratitude for our struggles. Maybe, because it's tough.
It can absolutely be tough. But I want to, if you want to pull up the video we've got here, Solo, I think this example kind of summarizes everything that we've been talking about for the last little bit here. So there's the Kyle Maynard, right? Like, this guy is amazing. All right, so this gentleman, this is Kyle Maynard, and you'll see here through the videos we talk through this, of anybody that had the right, if you will, to blame God for his life, to blame the universe, like this guy did. Yeah. So he's born with this super rare defect where he has, like you see him on the screen here, he has no arms below the elbows, no legs below the knee. And, there's a bunch of videos on YouTube y'all can go to find more about Kyle Maynard, but this dude's legit. So he learned as a youth, he came through and he played football, and we just saw him playing football there. And so he's playing wrestling, and this video he's talking about how his life goal is to fight in the UFC.
That's wild.
Like, right? Like look at this guy going through and the training he's going through, and doing shoulder raises and stuff with, like, he has no hands. Wrote a best-selling book, right? Typed it 100% by himself.
That's wild.
Writing in a journal here.
Better handwriting than I have.
Me too, right? Probably winning at Call of Duty there.
Yeah,
and this one right here.
I have.
taught himself to eat, got himself dressed, like lifting more weight than I can.
That's why.
But it's crazy. And he went and he climbed a mountain. It's in a different video I watched where he scaled a mountain in Tanzania. It's like 16,000 feet or some crazy altitude.
Which one?
I don't remember what the name of it was, but he, right, he's congenital amputee, best-selling book, wrestled. He lost his first 35 matches in wrestling. And he said the thing that got it that he finally realized is like, I'm feeling all this fear. Well, you know what? The person on the other side of the mat is also afraid.
Yep.
And he said that was a shift for him. And, you know, he never wanted to just be reliant on other people. And so he has all these goals. Like, could you imagine, like, if anybody had the opportunity or the right to just give up, to complain, to say, you know what, life dealt me a bad hand here. I just have to deal with it. It's this guy.
Yeah.
But he's gone out and he has accomplished more goals than you know, in his life already than most people ever will. And he just fights through it. And he saw it as a way to bless others too, because as you were saying before, you know, look at the world around you and see who you can lift up and use the pain and suffering you've gone through and the spirit with the life experience you've garnered throughout your life to bless somebody else. He's gone on several speaking tours. He wrote his book, as I mentioned, and what an inspiration.
Dude, that's so cool.
I mean, that guy's
Hey, if he's going to the UFC, he needs to find our boy Raja Ghul, because I feel like Raja only recruits the best of the best. And my man Kyle is in Bruce's camp any day.
going to be join the League of Shadows is the next one for him.
You know, it's crazy. It's like, people, how can people with so little appreciate so much and have so much in them, and us with so much can appreciate so little? And the tiniest winds blow us away. You know,
Wow.
you said that. How do you pronounce it? Herbiculture,
Horticulture.
Horticulture.
Yeah, that's the one.
So it reminds me of another fantastic leader, one of my favorite leaders. Another shameless plug, Matt Fowler, love you, fantastic leader. His favorite poem is called Good Timber. I'd love to read it.
Yeah, please.
It says, the tree that never had to fight for sun and sky and air and light, but stood out in the open plain and always got its share of rain, never became a forest king, but lived and died as a scrubby thing. The man who never had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil, who never had to win his share of sun and sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger trees. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. But sun and cold, by rain and snow, in trees in good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarchs of both, and they hold counsel with the stars, whose broken branches show the scars of many winds and much of strife. This is the common law of life. I can't think of a better poem to define exactly what we're talking about.
It's powerful.
Be good timber, right? Understand that toil, that wind, that struggle is what is going to be what gives you the strength to accomplish these wonderful and big things that you have deep in your heart, and embrace it.
Embrace it. That is the one, right? And that's our call to action. We want to have a, you know, call to action and, you know, goal for everybody, a challenge, if you will, to go take. And this week's it can be challenging, right?
It is
because it's a challenge.
Literally.
But that is to embrace the adversity. You don't need to go seek out extremely hard things unless it's your goals that are going to take you to be and help you grow and develop to be a better person, right? If the challenge is, you know, to go hit your financial goals or to go to the gym and be pressing 300 pounds, and then great, do the work necessary to go do that. But don't go just seeking problems in your life. Of course, that's not what we're advocating for. But embrace whatever life brings your way, and beyond that, Ask yourself the question, where is this current trial, where is this adversity going to take me? How can I grow from it? What are the lessons I can learn from this? Right? Turn to your faith in God or to Allah or to the general universe, whatever your faith is. Turn there for guidance
Right.
to help you get through it. And turn to those who care about you and care about your success as well, because they will be the support that you need to get through some of these challenges. Don't ever try to just go through things alone. Don't suffer in silence. Find those within your network who you know will have your back, and they will help you through it.
100%. I would also say, I feel like God putting this on my heart. We've told you not to go seek out struggle and challenge, but I actually might change my mind on that after God putting this on my heart. I would recommend those who are listening to this to challenge themselves over the next week to do one hard thing intentionally every single day. If that is call and apologize to somebody who you feel like you could have done better, you did wrong, do that. I know it's hard. If that is having the conversation about boundaries with the person that continues to habitually line step, I know that's hard, do it. If that is waking up early because you're a night owl or putting down the video games because you can't stop, if that is not drinking for just one day or taking a cold shower or whatever it is, intentionally seek out and do something hard on purpose to build that muscle that each of us need to have to become the best us's, the best we's, the best people that we could be. Go out and do something hard intentionally every single day. And to your
Absolutely.
point, Jake, don't do it alone. Like I was in the gym the other day and this big jack dude, roided out of his mind, was lifting more weight than I could ever imagine lifting. And he looks to his buddy and he says, "Hey bro, help me fail." And I thought that that was so appropriate. I thought
Yeah.
that that was so cool. I laughed under my breath because I didn't want him to like, one punch from this dude, my whole face explodes, right? So I don't want him to hear me laughing at him. But I laughed because he knew that the only way to grow his big self, bigger than anyone in the whole thing, was to lift heavy weight so much so where he got so tired that he couldn't lift it anymore. And that hurts. Help me fail. But he also knew that in that time of his weakness, when he was the weakest and it hurt the most, when his muscles were burning and he had nothing left in him, he would need somebody that he trusted to help pick that weight up off him. So don't do it alone, team. It's better than that all of us suffer a little than you suffer a lot alone. So find your tribe, find your people, find your spotter, and ask them this week to help me fail.
That's powerful. I love that, Solo. I love that's unscripted. Friends, take that challenge. We're gonna adopt this to say, don't seek out suffering, but embrace the challenges in your life, and do seek out opportunities to grow. And as Solo said, find hard things to do every day. Take action on your goals. The wise Jack Canfield says that the best way to find success, it's one of the many principles that he talks about for finding success, is to do 3 to 5 things every day or every week that help you towards your goals. And so this week, right, embrace the challenge, find ways to learn and grow. The last thing we'll leave you with is look back, right? We talk about journaling and keeping a gratitude journal. So this week's journaling exercise is look back at things in your life, like the life experience you have had that has made you who you are, right? Hindsight is 2020.
Yep.
So look back at the obstacles you have faced and that you have overcome.
Yeah.
And if you've never journaled about it, write about it.
Yeah.
Write about how you got through it. What did you learn from it? How has it blessed your life? Because as I said earlier, God will turn things for our good.
All things.
Solo referenced Joseph in Egypt. Like the dude was sold into slavery, but then was thrown in prison through no fault of his own for doing the right thing. He ends up in prison for years and years, and then he helps the other dude get out, and then that guy forgets about him until things are truly dire. And what happened? Joseph saved a nation. God will turn every bad thing in some way. If you rely on him, he will turn it for your good.
Yeah.
So look back at your life, journal about it, and remember. And remembering is what will give you the faith and the strength to go through the next hard thing.
That's right. I love that because it doesn't say that God says all things are good. No, it says that all things will work for the good. So you have to look at the things that aren't good and know that it's working for a greater purpose And that'll give you the strength to persevere in the midst of the bad. But understand, to Jake, your point, that 100% of the things that you've faced, you've gotten through. The proof is that you're here. So look
Batting a
back and
thousand.
appreciate it. And
Hall
be
of
good, timber.
Famers, Solo. We are Hall of Famers, batting a thousand.
Hall of Famers. So be good, timber team.
Be
Be
good,
good,
Timber.
timber family. We love you.
Yep. Love you all. Thanks
We're
for
out.
listening.